think we're good to start, are we, Eleanor?
Okay, great. If we have everybody. You're very welcome, everybody. My name is Eleanor Denny. I'm the Bursar and Director of Strategic Innovation here in Trinity, and I'm delighted to chair today's Healthy Trinity, the first Healthy Trinity Forum that we've had here in Trinity. And thanks to Martina Mullen for organising. So Martina is the Healthy Trinity Operational Lead and the Health Promotion Officer here in Trinity. And this session is incredibly timely. So as you may be aware, the board approved our sustainability strategy last week, and many of you will have seen the reports this week that there's fewer people walking and cycling to Trinity now. So I suppose today's session is really timely in the context of that news and the context of Dublin City Centre Transport Plan that we have today's forum. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from our four fantastic panelists and to engage in the question and answer session following a short presentation from each of our panelists. And we've got four great speakers today. So we've got Claire French. Claire is with Dublin City Council. She's a chartered engineer and has a master's in transport engineering, planning and policy from Trinity. And she's a senior executive engineer in the City Centre Transport Projects team. And she'll be responsible for the implementation of parts of the transport plan. So it'll be great to hear from Claire in terms of that wider Dublin transport plan. And then our second panelist is Professor Brian Caulfield. So he's a professor in transportation and head of the Department of Civil, Structural and Environmental Engineering here in Trinity, and a former chair of the Irish Transportation Research Network. And Brian is also the academic lead of our Healthy Trinity Smarter Travel Group, and he's going to speak about the plan today in light of transport to Trinity. And then up after Brian, we've got Jane Stout. So Jane is our Vice President for Biodiversity and Climate Action, and she's also a professor in botany here in the School of Natural Sciences. And as you all know, Healthy Trinity is part of Trinity Sustainability, and which is the office that Jane leads. And Jane is going to speak about the plan today in light of the biodiversity, climate and health aspects. And our final panelist is Mike Clark. And Mike is Trinity's Director of Campus Infrastructure. Mike is a qualified architect, and he is I suppose responsible for the estates management here within Trinity. And he's going to speak to us about the implications of the Dublin City Transport Plan in light of Trinity's campus operations. So the format is that I'm going to hand over to each of our panelists who are going to give a brief presentation. And panelists, I'm going to keep you to time because I want to make sure that we've plenty of time for questions and answers from the attendees here. And so after the presentations, we'll open the floor for questions, and I'll take a number of questions at a time and then present them to the panel to address. And one of the actions arising out of today is that we would really like for people to participate in the consultation. So there's an online survey. So I'll put the link to the consultation in the chat. And just to remind you that it would be great if you could also complete that before the deadline, which is at the start of December. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first panelist, who is Claire French from Dublin City Council. And thank you very much, everybody. And over to you, Claire. Thank you.
Everybody, and thanks for the invite. Delighted to be here. Hopefully now sharing of the screen is working. Okay, so I'm going to assume, unless I hear otherwise, that you can see and hear me. Okay, so I work at Dublin City Council, having studied at Trinity twice, my undergrad and then a master's. So I'm just going to speak briefly then today about the reasons for this transport plan, and then some of the measures that we're proposing, and focusing particularly on ones that are most going to affect Trinity. So I suppose our Dublin City Development Plan, which is adopted by our councillors, came into force last year. And within that, there are a number of objectives and policies. relating to transport, to movement and the public realm of the city. So this was why we started putting together this plan. So the main one there really is the objective was to review the initial transport study in 2016 along with the NTA, which we started earlier this year. So one of the main objectives as well that we had to, I suppose, take account of in coming up with this plan was this transition to more sustainable travel modes. So within the development plan, there's some quite ambitious targets, which looking at increasing the amount of walking, a doubling of cycling, which I suppose is interesting in context of your own research, an increase in public transport, and a 12% decrease in cars, taxis, and goods vehicles. Now, we're assuming that taxis and goods vehicles remain pretty constant, that number's not going to go down. So in actual fact, what we're going to be looking at is about a 40% reduction in car traffic to try and meet these targets by 2028. So what we're talking about really then, comparing to our 2019 numbers, which are our pre-COVID numbers, is to reduce the number of cars in the city by 21,500 each day, while at the same time increase the numbers coming into the city by public transport, walking and cycling by about 47,000. So we're looking to increase overall the number of people coming into the city, to bring them in by different modes. So these are quite ambitious and they're going to require a lot of changes in the city centre, particularly for public transport, walking and cycling. So the modelling that we carried out for this showed that roughly 6 out of every 10 cars in the very core of the city centre are only passing through. So they don't have a destination within the core city centre. So that's 60% of through traffic that does have alternative routes or alternative modes available. They're the ones that we are going to try to direct outside the city or onto public transport, walking or cycling. So it's not the first time we did it. We initially came out in 2015 with a study that was adopted in 2016. And back then, the reason was really to facilitate the implementation of the Lewis Cross City that was coming fast down the tracks, literally. And I suppose a lot of people have already forgotten what it was like beforehand and the quite significant changes we had to make. Even around Trinity, this was Dawson Street, which was 2 lanes and parking, which is now a public transport priority street. Had a big public realm improvement and much calmer and much quieter. Similarly, Lower Grafton Street, near the gate there, it's a very busy spot for buses and taxis and all sorts going on. And again, it's become a public transport corridor, much quieter and much calmer and a much more pleasant place to be. This is just a list just to indicate that all these changes did take place around the city since kind of 2016 and have just become the norm now. So Suffolk Street was a really busy bus corridor, narrow footpaths, not a pleasant place to be. Once you start removing traffic, then it opens up a whole lot of opportunities for the city. And similarly, you see more of the traffic changes, which was making part of Kildare Street two-way. One of the biggest changes we had to do really was on the quays, which was to allow the Lewis to get across O'Connell Bridge. As the Lewis 55 metres is longer than O'Connell Bridge, so it can't stop on the bridge, was to reduce the traffic on Bachelor's Walk on the North Quays. And we've been doing this for a number of years. And we've already, I suppose, over a significant enough time, reduced the number of cars on the North Quays by 70%, which is massive. And if we tried to go back to that, I'm sure people would be very unhappy. And if we tried to set out that we're going to reduce that, people will probably not be very happy. But we do manage to do these things over a number of different measures and implementations over the years. So at the minute, this through traffic in the city is really causing us delays on the public transport network. It's causing congestion, which is affecting deliveries in the city centre, and it's making it very hard to implement some of the cycling and networking schemes that we'd like to put in because the space isn't there at the minute. So these changes that are in the plan really had the aim of reducing the through traffic, creating a low traffic environment in the city centre. So we're not talking a no traffic environment, we're talking, allowing, facilitating people that need to go somewhere or want to go somewhere but aren't just using it to go through the city centre. And this time, while it was the lowest last time, now we're really looking at a couple of major public transport schemes that have a lot of investment. One of the major ones is the Bus Connects corridors, which is with the board at the minute. But when they start coming on stream, if we don't do something in the city centre, we'll have a load of networks converging on the city centre, coming in much faster than they are now with the new corridors, and then just getting stuck here in the city centre, not passing through, not being able to provide the frequency that's built into it, and really wasting millions, if not billions, of euro investment. Similarly, we have the Dart Plus, we have the Metrolink, and again, we want to try and facilitate the active travel network, providing walking and cycling. So that's why we're doing it, really. So it is to facilitate this public transport network, so that we can provide these reliable, secure, stable journey times through the city centre. Allow for the multimodal interchange. It's already working really well with the 90-minute fare. You can provide more of that. It's going to encourage more people to use multiple modes on their journey. Projects like Metrolink are going to be massive construction projects, which is going to affect the city. So again, we need to reduce the volumes to enable those works to take place. Allow the cycling network to grow. Allow the walking network to become better, more connected, more pleasant. And then always to ensure businesses to be able to continue to operate, get their deliveries and customers in. So within the report, I'm not going to go through them in detail, they're all up online. There are a number of different measures that we're going to propose to implement, similarly to what we did back in 2016. So I just want to, I suppose, look at Trinity in particular, a few of them that are going to affect it. The long awaited, I suppose, College Green at this stage. I started working on it in 2016. We're still going. Well, we will still keep going until we get there. So the main plaza is going along in the background with a design team to be appointed shortly. But in the meantime, once the bus network has moved the buses out of College Green, we hope to create at least a traffic-free space. It'll be pretty simple for a couple of years until the nice scheme comes in, but it'll be a much quieter place, and hopefully a much better, greener place. Another one then, which is going to lead to a knock-on for Trinity and a number of schemes, is the removal of the left turn from Westland Row onto Pier Street. So this is Pier Street Dart Station, it's Trinity up here. So at the minute, we have a huge volume of cars who are passing through the city, coming down Westland Road, turning left onto Pier Street, Tara Street, and across the Liffey. So from next year, hopefully this will no longer be permitted. Only buses, taxis, cyclists will be able to turn left. All other traffic will have to turn right and go back on itself and find another way across. So this measure then will quite dramatically reduce the traffic volumes on Pier Street and Tara Street, and further on onto Gardner Street on the north side, which will allow us to do a number of different things in the area. So that will then give us the opportunity to do some of these things that we would really like to do on Pier Street, which is a really wide street. It's slightly underutilized at the minute, except for certain times of days. Will certainly be underutilized when we reduce the traffic volumes, and that then gives us the space to put in protected cycle lanes, expand the footpaths, and give priority to the buses. So these are just ideas at the minute. It's not a final layout, but that's the sort of thing we'd be looking to provide. That will then again have a knock-on effect onto Tara Street, which is going to be really important for us with the future Metrolink station so close. It's going to be a huge increase in the number of pedestrians in this whole area. The footpaths are not sufficient hardly as it is at the minute. It certainly won't be when we have all these extra people coming in. So that will again allow us to reallocate space, take it off the vehicle lanes and give it over to pedestrians and cyclists. And again, these are just kind of options of providing, more space for cyclists and pedestrians while allowing the buses to come through. And it'll hopefully look vastly different to the very harsh multi-lane environment that it is at the minute. One of our other opportunities then is, again, by removing the traffic from on Pier Street and the Western Row link. We have an opportunity to remove the gyratory around Lincoln Place, potentially closing off and create a bit of a pedestrian area, and opening up onto the gallery there, which is a lovely area but hard to see at the minute, while still providing access into and out of Trinity College so they can continue their operations and access as they have it currently. And this, potentially something along these lines. I'll just be looking after the traffic and the traffic management, and those who are much better talented will come up with better looking plans like this. So just to finish up then, I suppose what the outcomes, what we're looking to get out of this really is to reduce the car traffic by that 60%, creating this low traffic environment, which will then facilitate a more reliable and frequent public transport offering for the city. The modelling shows that if we achieve this, we'll reduce the emissions by 34 kilometres, 34% of kilometres travelled by private car. Reduce noise and air pollution in the very core of the city centre. It'll also improve connectivity for pedestrians, so we'll be able to allow more time at the different junctions for pedestrians crossing. You'll be able to walk between Stephen's Green and the Spire 30% quicker. Even on Colin Bridge, we'll be able to significantly reduce the wait time for pedestrians. So you're not waiting for all these vehicles to get through. And then again, the space, we have that opportunity for the various cycle projects to connect and cross the city, which is what we are lacking at the minute. There are some excellent sections of cycle lane, and then they're not quite connecting up. So this is, to help us provide those links. And so just then the consultation, so as mentioned, it's still open until the 1st of December. We have about 2,300 responses so far, mainly positive. We're looking at about 8% positive at the minute, 20% negative. We'd love to hear everyone's feedback, and there's plenty of opportunities for suggestions as well. We'd love to hear all of it, so we'd encourage everyone to participate and let us know what you think. And again, I suppose just a reminder of how different the city has been. This being Grafton Street with the buses and traffic going down. A few bollards at the top changed all that initially, as they did on Henry Street in the 70s, where they closed it off, put a few benches and planters down, and I suppose the rest is history.
Great, thank you very much, Claire. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions on foot of that. Thank you so much. So we'll hand over to Brian Caulfield now to speak to us about this in the context of Trinity. Thanks.
Okay, just double checking you can see my slides.
Yeah, we can see them.
You can see them. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Claire for coming and talking to us. And as head of civil engineering, I'm very proud to see the fantastic work that our graduates are doing in Dublin City Council, and it's great to see Claire's a real ambassador for civil engineering in Trinity, and we're all very proud of her. Also, I'd like to thank the bursar and our VP for biodiversity and climate action for taking the time to speak this afternoon on this really important topic for not only for Trinity but also for the city. And before I get into the slides that Martina, who's my co-lead on smarter travel, and I can see a number of the committee members are in the room as well. And again, I'd like to thank them, and they did a lot of this analysis. I didn't get around to it. But first of all, before I start, just a couple of numbers. I love numbers. The first one was, it really strikes me from what Claire spoke about, is that it's 60% of traffic that has no business being in the city centre is what we're trying to get rid of. And that's, I suppose, one of the fundamentals. The other one is, if we listen to what the UN said yesterday, we've very little chance, 14% of staying below 1.5 degrees. So I think that target has been and gone. And it's been gone for some time, I think, if you talk to a lot of climate scientists. But also, the thing that they said yesterday, unless aggressive action is taken, we will get above 3 degrees in terms of our temperature changes. nothing that Claire showed me there today looked aggressive in terms of what they want to do for the city centre. And indeed, it looks it's removing traffic that doesn't need to belong in there. So it's very important for the city. And internationally, when I look at other cities that have done something similar, that have been doing it for decades ahead of us, there is this doom and gloom at the start that the sky will fall in, that nothing will work, businesses will close down, and all of the research and evidence from across the globe is contrary to that. So it is a very positive thing, I think, for both for the city and for our university. So to talk a little bit about some of the work that we do in the Smarter Travel group since 2011, and I can see my predecessors on the call as well. Mike is there, and we've been collecting this data on how our staff and students get to our campus. As you saw in the Irish Times on Monday, that there has been a change in how our staff and students get to our campus. And while the thing that I like the most on this graph here is that 3% still only get there by car, which is massively positive and is an outlier across the world when it comes to a university campus. From a healthy Trinity perspective, the numbers that are cycling and walking are falling. And that's one of the things that we're concerned about. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the second slide. But on this slide here, one of the things that is striking is the amount of staff and students that are living within close proximity to our campus. That, as you can see, has changed. That there are more people commuting longer distances to get into our get into the city centre, but then also our staff and students are commuting these longer distances. This is a hangover from COVID, but I suppose the most important thing is it's an indictment of the current housing situation in our capital city. And I know I won't be alone with colleagues that are on the call that will know that students are coming into our classes tired because they've been commuting for long distances to get there. And I think that's one of the key things that's causing the changes that we're seeing. I've only got 2 slides, and this is the first one. The second slide I just wanted to talk about is the changes. And thank you again, Martina, for putting up these slides for us today. The key thing that we see here from a healthy Trinity perspective is that the numbers that are walking and cycling to the campus have fallen dramatically. Specifically cycling, when you look at that, it was 22% in 2011, and then it has now dropped to 9%. Last year, when the census came out, the data that we have in terms of the pedestrians getting to university campuses across the country, that fell by 7%. Trinity had fell by 8%. So we're pretty much on target. We're pretty close to what the national trends are. It's the cycling values that have fallen so significantly that that we're off kilter with in terms of the national values. Nationally, they more or less stayed the same, whereas in Trinity they fell. Then the other side is that in terms of how our staff and students get to our campus, 2/3 now get there by public transport. This has seen a large increase. It's pretty similar to the increase that we're seeing nationally as well from the census. And this is linked to a number of things. Firstly, I think it is linked to the fact that staff and students are traveling longer distances to get to our campus, and therefore walking and cycling are no longer viable options. And then the second thing is because of the cost of public transport and how that has decreased over the past 2 years. More students are using it. Nationally, that's seen as well, that more students are using public transport because it has become cheaper. So those are the 2 main trends. And then just maybe to circle back briefly to what Claire was talking about, if 2/3 of the staff are getting to our campus, staff and students are getting to our campus by using public transport, and that, as I said, that is fantastic. It's phenomenal. It's unheard of. There's another campus very close to Trinity that a number of public sector workers go to that doesn't have anywhere near this type of mode share in terms of public transport. Indeed, that they all have car parking spaces. But if we look at what Claire and the City Council and what the elected representatives have voted on is to remove the car traffic from the city centre, that's going to make that 66%, the 2/3 of our colleagues that get to our campus get there quicker. And I suppose that's one of the reasons why along with many other, that I would support the plan. And I would echo what the bursar said about filling out the plan. I think, and I've said this to Claire and to other people in the city council, and I'm sure Jane is going to speak about it too. I'd like to see more green in the plan. I'd like to see a lot more of that throughout the plan. But again, I would like to thank everybody for coming and listening, and I would hope that you would support what the city council are doing. There's another event that's going to happen on the 30th, so next week, in the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. I'm speaking with Minister Ryan at that event on the data on how what we're trying to do for the city is being echoed right across Europe. So I will leave it at that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Brian. And I can see there's questions coming into the questions and answers there. So I'd encourage people to add their questions as they think of them, and I'll combine those and put them to the panel at the end. Jane, we'll go straight to you next. I'm conscious of time, so I apologies in advance if I need to cut people short, but it's important that we get time for questions. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks very much, Eleanor. So yes, I was asked to speak about how the plan affects Trinity from this climate, biodiversity and health perspective. So I just want to start off by talking about how Trinity is bringing these issues together in general in our sustainability strategy. And just to introduce Trinity Sustainability, myself, Jane Hackett and Sarah Lardner, along with the Healthy Trinity team, as Eleanor mentioned, led by Martina. And what we've done is spent the last 12 months consulting on and developing the strategy and action plan. And somehow I've managed to lose my screen, so I don't know how to move on. Hang on a sec. Right. And I suppose, we're focusing on three key areas. So climate change, biodiversity loss and health. And these issues are very much connected. And this figure is one that I really like, but it also horrifies me. So it's from one of the recent IPCC reports. And what it shows is, as Brian mentioned, this prediction of this increase in global temperatures. It's most likely that we'll see a 3-degree increase in global temperatures over the next decade. And so what this means is that our students, most of whom were born in the early 2000s, will experience a very different future from the one that we've experienced. And in fact, will experience a very different future to any humans ever. So the last time the planet was 3 degrees warmer was 3 million years ago, which is before humans ever evolved. So this is the context that we're talking about climate change in, is we as a species are not necessarily adapted to these conditions. Added to which, we've lost a huge proportion of our biodiversity globally. 75% of land surface of Earth has been highly modified by human activity. Populations of wild animals have shrunk by more than 2/3 in the last 50 years. And this loss of biodiversity makes it much more difficult to cope with changing climates, the extreme weather events, storms, floods, but it also risks our health in terms of risking the food supply, risking the resources that fuel our economies. It means there's fewer opportunities for developing new treatments from natural products, and also has severe implications for our physical and mental health. And so the sustainability strategy has been inspired by these two diagrams here. The one on the left is a reimagining of the SDGs and just revisioning them as in this wedding cake, the idea that a healthy biosphere underpins a healthy society and a healthy economy. So by focusing on biodiversity loss and climate change, we can make that link with our own health and well-being. The sustainability strategy then was informed by, as I say, over the last 12 months, a lot of consultation, benchmarking, looking at what other universities are doing, looking at our current impacts, what are we currently doing in terms of our impacts on carbon emissions, and what are we obliged to do through the government's climate action plan as a public body. And through this work, then, we've developed the strategy, which has a vision to focus on 3 things. So climate change, biodiversity loss, and that we address these in a holistic, integrated and health-focused way, And that our mission then is to deliver this, this vision through our education, our research, our operations, so what we do on a day-to-day, and through our partnerships with collaborators, both within the university and outside. So the sustainability strategy has three key priorities, three headline targets. So tackling climate change, restoring biodiversity and creating healthy futures, and implementation of actions across these four pillars of education, research, operations, and community or partnerships to deliver these priorities or meet these targets. Under the operational pillar, then we have a huge number of targets, and we've organised these into visioning our campus as a nature positive campus, a climate smart campus, an active campus, a circular campus, and a responsible campus. So the nature positive campus, this connection with nature can really improve our mental and physical health. Slows down our stress responses, induces calm, and even though our campus is quite small and in the middle of a city, greening it builds the diversity and the network of green spaces across the city. In terms of climate smart campus, a lot of that's around reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and then of course an active campus, and that really relates to what we're talking about here today. And when we talk about the campus, we're not just talking about here on the College Green campus, but Trinity's extended campus encompassing all the hospitals, sports grounds and other sites. So we want to promote healthy, more sustainable, less polluting travel, not just in terms of greenhouse gases, but other pollutants that come from mechanised transport as well. And we're concerned about how staff and students travel to and from our whole campus and how that affects our health. So Brian's already shown this figure, and what we see here is that we're seeing reductions in active travel, and particularly worrying then is the reduction that we see in cycling. And this decline in active travel has health implications. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, have identified transport as a key means of physical activity, and the decrease in walking and cycling, coupled with these longer commuting distances that Brian mentioned, is a challenge for staff and student mental, physical, and social health. So again, this is where we're bringing the crises in nature together with the crises of health. Active travel is less polluting, healthier, and provides opportunities to restore nature and to green our cycling routes. Hang on a second, I'm just struggling to get back to my slides. So Trinity has 4 priority routes that connect College Green campus to some of other sites, so St James's Hospital, Trinity Hall, Trinity East, and as Brian has already said, you know, we very much welcome the plan, and our response is framed according to these priorities routes. So the idea of a plaza at the Lincoln Gate is fantastic. Mike will talk about what this means operationally for the College Green campus. We really do appreciate the thought that's going into making the city more livable, more walkable, greener. We'd value wider footpaths and more greening, particularly on Nassau Street. On George's Street, which is part of our College Green to Trinity Hall route, we've got over 1,000 students that travel every day from Trinity Hall to the College Green campus, so it would be great if George's Street were added to this plan. Hang on. Sorry, I'm struggling with the slides here now. The other street that we're particularly interested in is Pierce Street. This is not part of the Bus Connects, and so changes could potentially be made there more quickly than other routes. Currently, Pierce Street's a 4-lane carriageway. It's got a fairly high speed limit of 50 kilometres an hour, and there is associated air and noise pollution, which is really contrary to what we're trying to achieve, making Dublin a healthier, more sustainable city, and as part of our own sustainability strategy in Trinity. So we very much welcome the prioritisation of walking, cycling, public transport and greening on Pierce Street. We'd like these wide footpaths. We'd like safe segregated cycling in 2 directions to connect our main College Green campus with the Trinity East campus. And with as much greening and biodiversity as possible. And as an organisation, we're really happy to support the design of that space if that's useful. Trinity is part of the Green Pierce Street Cooperation, which is a partnership of Pierce Street-based organisations, businesses, the local community, and the aim is to reimagine Pierce Street and to green Pierce Street. And then finally, College Green. So thank you for including College Green, very important to Trinity, the front gate of Trinity. We're really looking forward to the full public realm scheme for the area being designed. We'd love to see more greening on College Green. So we look at this artist's impression, this image here, it's still very grey. We'd like to get the green into College Green. Trinity hosted an event with the Vice Mayor of Paris for biodiversity in 2021. And we asked, could O'Connell Street be an extraordinary garden like the Champs-Élysées in Paris? So I suppose what we're asking today is, could College Green be an extraordinary garden? Could we have more nature than is imagined in this image here? Can we build up the diversity of green spaces, the network of green spaces across the city, so that the city can actually support birds, insects, fungi, biodiversity, so that it can help to clean the air, capture carbon, ameliorate flood water, so that it can make an active travel within the city more pleasant and contribute to improving our physical and mental health. So thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jane. And finally, I'll hand over to Mike Clark for our final panel contribution, and then we'll address the questions that are coming into the chat. Thank you. Mike, you're on mute there.
Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can see that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So the problem going last, of course, is that sometimes people steal your thunder. So what I try to do with this is keep it very much at a high level. I appreciate we've got impacts on Western Road and Pierce Street, but one of the ones from an operational perspective is Lincoln Place, because Lincoln Place Gate is where all our servicing requirements happen into the campus. So the transport plan shows the corner of the Lincoln scene opposite the National Gallery. That looks all fantastic, but there's clearly two sides to this. So what I would like to see, and this is looking at Lincoln Place towards Redemption Hospital on a really busy day, is the idea that we have some kind of a shared surface. This is obviously a Mediterranean example. There's a good example in London, in Kensington, outside the museum. That's a massive scale. But I think something like this, like having a shared surface that our vehicles could come over into Lincoln Place Gate, and the other benefit here and opportunity for Trinity is that there's only ourselves, the Irish College of General Practitioners, and two tenants in Lincoln House beyond that line. So I think there would be a lot of opportunity for us to make that an interesting part of Dublin, possibly the Kennedys and others to animate it more with activity. So the image on the right, again, it's got a wide enough surface there that we could utilise for our deliveries and not, I think, detract from the pedestrianisation in the transport plan. The opportunity then.
Hi, Mike. Sorry, I'm sorry for disturbing. It's a little difficult to hear you. Do you think, is it the microphone or?
Let me just check my. Is that better?
Yeah, that is better since you moved it.
Okay, so the opportunity then for cycling so far, we've put over 1,100 bike racks across the state, and with the climate action mandate being very clear about reducing the vehicular traffic, I think that opens up some opportunities for improving our cycling infrastructure. And it's interesting that a lot of questions that have come in online talk about that electric bike cycling infrastructure. So with reduced parking spaces, I think there's opportunities here in terms of what we could do. I've possibly sold a lot of people's thunder, but just looking at this morning, we give generous support in Ireland for electric bikes and cargo bikes. But when you look at, say, France, 90% of the country want to use bikes daily trips by 24, and the €4,000 as a trade-in.
Mike, I'm sorry for disturbing again. It's still very hard to hear you. I'm sorry. You're kind of coming in and out.
Just excuse me 1 sec.
Sorry, just I'm really, really interested. So I want to know what you're
Is that
saying.
any better?
It is, but it's just, it drops in and out, but we'll see, try that. Thanks, Mike.
So what's interesting in France, you can claim up to 25 cents per kilometre, up to €200 a year. So I think there needs to be a step change from the government in terms of supporting cycling if we are going to increase the numbers, because the electric bike market is maturing immensely, and I think there's great opportunities there. The other aspect of this, again, is site logistics management. For those of you familiar with our campus, you can see that top view may be all disconcerting. This is what our campus currently looks like. And I think, again, with reduction in car parking spaces, there are facilities out there at the moment that we could really improve, how we collect and recycle waste on campus, but also do it in a way that reduces the vehicular traffic coming onto site, which we do probably far more frequently. This obviously will require investment, but they just give a demonstration of what's out there for for products, and the idea that these things compact as being buried underground to me is a great idea, that one we should pursue at some point. But also the benefit of that, of course, is that the top view that you see does not actually become an issue anymore. There's a couple of areas I think needs further consideration. So the logistics management that's called out in the transport plan. Arabs are very fortuitous, to me anyway, who's popped into my inbox recently. They've done a global report about the future of goods movements and about how the supply chain has altered, especially when you think of the impact that boat hitting the side of the Suez Canal had not that long ago. And so there is clear guidance in the transport program about what the council's kind of ambitions are here. So the example on the right is actually, it's received planning consent. This is a project in quite close to central London in Old Kent Road by a developer called British Land. And I think this is an example of the type of micro consolidation site that developers in London are looking at, with similar kind of challenges of reducing freight traffic. And so this has got capacity for both vehicles and for electric cargo bikes, etc. And it will serve as a distribution hub with a view of reducing the traffic. So there's one for Claire there to take away. And then finally, one of the things I picked up on was the issue about the HGVs in the transport plan. And the image on the left is what DAF are currently doing in terms of electric vehicles. But if you do any building around it, well, just any building generally, you need concrete, whether it's in the current form or it's in the new hybrid versions coming in. And the middle picture there on the top is a concrete mixer, but the actual drum itself is electrically operated. You can still see quite a hefty kind of fuel tank there in the middle of that picture. And then the other consideration in terms of what vehicles can and cannot come into Dublin are just two examples there about cranes. We need cranes to survive on building sites generally. And you can see from the scale of them there that they're not ready yet to be electrified or to be battery chargers, to say. So there is kind of a challenge there, I think, over the next few years before batteries become so powerful that they can actually power a crane, that we will have some kind of understanding across the wider industry, not just the Trinity, these types of vehicles to continue to service our campus and the satellite buildings that we have. So that's it for me.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. Okay, so there's plenty of questions that have come in to the chat. So I'm going to, some of them are related, so I'm going to combine them. And first, Claire, I'm going to come to you. So the first are around the timelines of the proposed schemes, in particular the timeline around College Green, and how confident you are in terms of achieving that timeline, and how are you going to make sure that, I suppose, that the ambition isn't watered down by various business interests and so on. So the first set of questions is just around the timeline and the achievability of that timeline. And the second is around infrastructure, and particularly around cycling infrastructure. Perhaps you could speak a little bit about the plans relating to cycle infrastructure coming in and out of the city centre more broadly, and you know, plans around whether cycle infrastructure will be segregated or shared with bus lanes, and how the use of cycle lanes can be better enforced to stop cars parking and stopping in cycle lanes. So first set of questions around timelines, and the second around the bicycle infrastructure. So Claire, if I could direct those to you in the first instance, please.
So timelines, I suppose, what we're saying is a lot of these measures are traffic management measures, which means they're done under our own powers. So like civil engineering wise, they're very simple. It's lining and signing, and okay, it's a bit more than that, but they're not big, you know, big projects. So our aim over the next 12 months is to get the traffic out. So we're going to be aiming to do Westland Row and the North and South Quays next summer. Now, I'm ready to go. I'm being held back really, but we do have various consultations to do. If we, and I think we will get these 3 done, that'll be a massive change in the city centre. And they're not big. They don't require big works or anything. It's going to be communication really and enforcement. But that is our starting point. So once we get the traffic out, once things have started to settle, then we'll be able to see, you know, what space is left, and then we'll be able to start improving, you know, the different areas. But they're the 3 really key ones to stop this through traffic, to break this link. So they're the ones we're going to go for first. It's the same as we did at Capel Street. You know, we did the hard bit, in my view. We took the traffic out and we let it all settle. And now if you walk up there in about a week's time, 2 weeks time, the planting is starting to go in next week, and the trees, you know, we worked with our parks people to come back, and then we can start improving the street. Because we don't do that, we'll spend months or years arguing about where the traffic will go. So we just need to get rid of the traffic first, and then everything else will follow. College Green is slightly different. There's kind of 2 different things going on at the same time. There's a kind of a quick kind of pathfinder traffic-free thing going on that's entirely dependent on the buses. Once the buses are moved out of College Green, which is scheduled for next year, but we know there are delays, then we can just make that space traffic-free. And that'll be an interim scheme, but, you know, so it's not going to be a long-term thing, but we can put, you know, some seating and probably more planters of planting at first, you know, but at least we can start to use the space, get the space back to pedestrians and cyclists. Running in tandem is the main project. The design team will be appointed and announced pretty soon. I will say, without giving anything away, it's very different. I think the last time greening is so important in all the submissions we've seen. I think it's not gonna look like that image we saw. I don't think. We hope not. Which is great to see. Trinity are obviously a major stakeholder, so they'll be very involved once the team are up and running, and, you know, consultations and all that. The cycle network. So our active travel colleagues are working on that. They have a map of a created network, and this is what's really key, is this, you know, as I say, this connectivity and not stopping and starting, and in one part you're in a bus lane and then you're on the traffic and then you're up and then you're down. It's create a connecting network through. Some of it they're doing anyway, some of it they need us to start giving them a few lanes back to create the space. But it is about creating a proper, segregated, using various different methods, network, so people, you know, who don't cycle now are, you know, feel safe and secure to do so. Enforcement is really tricky. You know, nobody is fond of bollards, myself included, even though I unfortunately put thousands of them out. At the minute, it's all we have to stop vehicles blocking cycle lanes and various things, and up on footpaths. Like, the guards don't have the resources, we don't really have the resources. I think it needs to be a mind shift. It needs to become socially unacceptable to block footpaths and block cycle lanes. At the minute, it's not. People don't even think about it. I don't know how that's achieved, but, you know, it needs to be the same as, you know, not putting on your seatbelt or smoking indoors. There needs to be some shift in the mindset of the public. You know, these spaces are not for vehicles, they're for others. because of, you know, to try and enforce it all, unfortunately, it's not quite possible. So if anyone has any ideas on that, just let me know. I think that's the questions there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Claire. So we also received some questions in advance of the today's forum. So I'm wrapping those up in the questions as well. So the next set of questions are directed to you, Mike. So it's around parking and covered parking for electric bikes on campus. And plans for, is there plans for growth in that? And the second is around the use of cargo bikes on campus for staff and students, and you know, how much is that used at the moment, and how might we better support the use of cargo bikes for staff and students, please?
As I said in the presentation, I think the opportunity for additional coverage and space for e-bikes will happen as we reduce the amount of parking, because the surface areas around Trinity are few and far between. That's not to say that we couldn't look into specific areas if anybody's got any idea. That when I walk around campus, the types of infrastructure needed for electric bikes, including the charging and the security, it's not just something that you can drop in between, say, the Lloyd and Snimes building. In terms of cargo bikes, there was a trial proposed. I think there's a general nervousness about some people using colleagues using cargo bikes because of the size of them. You can get 3-wheelers, but we do a lot of kind of inter-building deliveries and the like. So I think in the future we should be looking to progress that, especially the 3-wheel versions. But that, I think, as well, Bursa comes from a review of the logistics as we start to understand how we will get served as a campus. So if you think about the pandemic, when we were buying pallets of sanitizer and face masks, the question of where do you store that in the future if we're going to be limited by the frequency of deliveries onto site. But that, I think, will get resolved as the detail becomes more clearer about distribution of them.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. So very much watch this space, I guess, in terms of that. Brian, a question for you on some of the research, or perhaps to Martina as well. Just in terms of, is there any evidence to show that the reduction in cycling is at all related to the increase in the use of e-scooters? And where do e-scooters fit in the active travel picture?
I'll let Martina looked at the data better than I did. Internationally, the research shows that e-scooters just cannibalize walking trips. So maybe that's something that we're seeing here. I know from being on campus, I don't see very many e-scooters. They are legal now, but I suppose between now and the next survey that we do, it's likely that we'll have a shared scheme in the city. And it's not something I'd be very supportive of. I don't think it's a good idea. But I don't think there was very much in the data on e-scooters, was there, Martina? No, because they were legal at the time when we did the survey. But it's something that we do need to keep an eye on. And I suppose for Mike as well, that if they do become more prolific, the amount of them that will be brought in and around our buildings and spaces and where they charge and all those kind of things will become more problematic, I suspect. They're better than cars.
Especially SUVs.
Great, thanks. And just Jane, for you, just in terms of the statement, you'd like to see further greening of College Green. I suppose as an expert in biodiversity, I mean, what sort of things would you like to see more of in that College Green scheme, and perhaps more broadly in the wider transport plan?
Thanks. I guess I'd like to see more diversity. So I think one of the problems that we have when we start greening is we start to make everywhere look the same. So it's a diversity of greening, so a diversity of heights of plants, a diversity of types of plants, and I suppose, you know, linking up with the low mow that we have in Front Square and the ornamental meadows that we have out on the front gate. You know, if if we can create more space that's kind of meadow-like as well as trees, as well as planters, you know, I'd like to see, and you know, particularly in terms of, I know, Claire, you were saying that planters might be a sort of an interim greening, you know, things like nature-based solutions and suds and coping with water flows, and you know, getting actual absorbency into the ground and into the soil is really important. So it's not just about putting planters out and putting things in planters, but I'd love to see that might kind of more holistic approach and nature-based solutions incorporating biodiversity and greening.
Super, thanks, Jane. And I think certainly from the questions that are coming in and from the responses from the panel, I think it's very clear that there's a huge amount of interest and enthusiasm, but also expertise within Trinity in this space. And I suppose maybe my next question would be to Martina, just how would you recommend that people can get involved going forward, and what exactly can they do in terms of this consultation in order to get their views heard and so on?
Yeah, thanks a million, Eleanor. It's really a very simple process. So if people, I'm just going to share screen really quickly. It's literally just radio buttons. So it's not in any way difficult. It's 11 questions. That's what it looks like. And you can put in something in the open section if you want. But really what we're trying to achieve is as many responses from Trinity people as possible, because I think we're trying to support. You can see from what Claire presented, everybody wants the same thing. I'd love to, I still don't fully understand why this stuff goes pear-shaped. But anyway, we're trying to do everything we can to support our colleagues in Dublin City Council and the NTA. So the way to do that at the moment is as many as people as possible going in and just clicking that link and filling in whatever you think yourself. We're not imposing our views, but if you could put in what you think.
Fantastic, thanks, Michelle and sorry, Martina. And that link went out in an email to all Trinity staff, I understand, yesterday, and so we would encourage people to complete that. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today's panel, but I'd like to take the opportunity again to thank. We had a fantastic turnout for today's session, so I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today, and in particular, I'd like to thank Martina for organising, and our panelists, Claire, for giving up the time to join us today, from Dublin City Council, to Brian, to Jane, and to Mike, and hopefully, I suppose this is the kind of the kickstart of some really exciting initiatives in and around the Trinity campus that I suppose we're delighted to have forum like this to discuss these, and I hope everybody will take the time to complete the online consultation. And Martina, I suppose that you're the kind of contact point going forward, so if people have further questions or comments after today's forum, they can reach out to you directly, and we can kind of keep in touch on that basis. So on that note, I'd like to thank everybody again, and thank the organisers and the panelists, and hopefully we'll be in touch on this again. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.